So, let me preface this video by saying, welcome back. This is my first video in a month. Why am I making fewer videos? Because I'm still thinking about what I plan to do as the next big project or the next big thing. So, until I figure that out, the least I can do is determine that this channel is not dead. And how can I do that? By bringing back an old series of mine. Yep, that's right. Although they're not going to be called the Scipio rants anymore because I hate the word rant. I thought Scipio needed to return somehow. So I thought now would be the time. So, what do you call these? Well, I will simply call them Scipio discussions, or rather speaks. Taking something from my old Nirvana Speak series and placing the old Scipio name on it. Turning two things into one thing to revive it. And how do I want to set the new tone for this crazy thing? Well, by saying goodbye to a crazy thing. See, back when I was growing up in my teenage years, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. My love of sports talk radio, mainly the Jim Rome show, sent me down the rabbit hole into sports journalism, something that, of course, I didn't follow because college sucks, especially for disabled people, and the lack of transportation kind of halted the dream. So I took all my knowledge of sports talk radio and my want and need to speak and turned it into this very channel. So you have my love of sports talk to thank for all this stuff that I've been doing for the last 12 to now close to 13 years or so. Why do I bring this up? Because, unbeknownst to you until now, I had actual goals with that. Actual things that I wanted to do. One, I wanted to get the degree proper, back when degrees actually mattered. Two, I wanted my own radio show either locally where I live or nationally syndicated. The original name of that radio show, if I ever got it, was going to be Code America, which is the old name of this channel back when it began. And I had a third goal, which is the subject of this video, sadly. My third goal, if I ever became famous enough or ever started to do newspaper sports journalism like the old days, was to be on my favorite sports show. No, not the Jim Rome show, although I did try to call the show once. No, my favorite sports show is and always has been ESPN's Around the Horn. Why? Well, Around the Horn was a concept that I instantly dug for sports columnists from across the country, thus going around the horn from one side of the country to the other, thus the name, to talk about the topical sports topics of the day. It was set up as a spin-off of the late great The Sports Reporters, a show that was on ESPN every Sunday morning. Pretty much where Mike Tirico got his goings on, and the late John Saunders ushered in the show for about a decade plus. But Around the Horn had a gimmick, a rather unique gimmick. A gimmick that would be not only its calling card, but the main reason I stuck with the show for the entire 20-year run. The mute button. Yep, that's right. As Max Kellerman once described it, it's the game show, because it was a literal game, with joysticks and mute buttons. Now, of course, in its current form, as it goes out, the joysticks are gone, but the buttons, especially the mute buttons, still remain intact. Hosted by Max Kellerman for at least the first 2 years of the show's life, Around the Horn quickly dominated its, in my time, 3 p.m. time slot, quickly growing a tag team with the legendary Pardon the Interruption. After Max left ESPN the first time to join Fox Sports 1 and make a strangely very around the horn but without the mute buttons and without the restraint show called IMAX that was focused solely on him, Around the Horn decided to promote one of its lesser known personalities, Tony Reale, formerly known as Stat Boy on the early years of PTI, into the main seat. This would begin a nearly 18-year run as the host, arbiter, and ultimately in the later years, the voice of moral reason. Not for the sports reporters, mind you, although he was that, armed with his trusty mute button, but often he would speak out on big topics. This is what got Around the Horn in trouble in these last couple years, taking clearly stances that most people didn't agree with, that didn't have to deal with the sports of the day, bringing in sports writers that had something more to say than your topical, yelly, at the bar takes of the day. This would ultimately be the show's death knell, although the ratings would stay consistent even until today. Or, when you see this video, it will be the Friday of the show's finale. Over 4,000 episodes later. So then, why was this show, and being on this show, my third biggest goal coming out of high school? It's because I love this show. I loved its unique concept. It's almost video game esque randomnism. How the points in the scoring system would be constantly changing, constantly in flux, and the things that you could get muted for went from going on too long to specifically banned words in more recent years, like elite or legendary. Sorry, Tony, I know I just cost myself a combined 6 seconds for just saying those words. But yes, and Even the set changed from the set in DC with the joysticks and the big seat to a now 3D AR set as it's going out with actual background effects whenever a columnist would make a fiery take, or a take that was right, or go extremely steady and see the math equations behind them, added with a more colorful and more on theme set on top of it. Of course, the show was moved to New York at the same time that shows like Get Up was starting its reign, and First Take also moved to New York, sharing the set at different times. Now, my favorite set was the second set, which Tony Reale would refer to as the Starship Enterprise, due to the fact that it was mainly white and bright, with the show's older logo, and a much wider room also containing the 4 screens and a newly redone version of the desk. Which the difference with the desk in version 2 is you could actually see through it, and it had colored buttons, which the original set did not. It was basically a news desk uploaded with the joystick apparatuses, and they had a more solidly black and wooden structure. Plus, the old disembodied voice that used to follow Max around would be suddenly replaced and removed. But by and large, I always wanted to be on the show because it was a mix of bar banter and sports conversation and back and forth with stats, mixed with a little bit of freedom of personality. And oh boy, personality. There were names, lots of them. If I went through every single panelist that ever took a seat in one of these 4 screens and what they had done, I had been here all day. I was a Jay Moriarty guy back in the day, but I had a soft spot. A certain soft spot, and if this doesn't reveal where I'm actually at, I don't know what will. The legendary columnist of the Denver Post, also of the Colorado Springs Gazette for a time, Woody Page. Woody Page has been the constant beating heart of this show, regardless of who was in the seat. And even for a couple of April Fool's jokes, even took on hosting duties. This man has the most wins, the most mutes, the most points. He was the first finalist to get a half win. He's the most silly person during the Halloween episodes. His famous chalkboard pretty much was so popular it became a book. I mean, this show practically made this dude, and he already had a resume in the paper print a mile wide. He's a Colorado legend, even before taking on his regular seat. And here's the funny thing, it wasn't originally supposed to be him, it was supposed to be TJ Saunders in the spot. But Woody just had a certain charisma, a certain energy, a certain vibe. And eventually, once he found what worked, he continued to do what worked until this very day. So many newspaper guys have had their careers made and defined by this 30 minutes. the impact of this show and the inevitable loss of it will be felt for decades. But we live in the era of revivals. So I'm going to tell ESPN this. When anything you do from this point on to try to replace Around the Horn fails and you're forced to bring Around the Horn back, like Michael Jordan wearing the 4-5, just understand it's going to maim you. It's going to blow you like smithereens. And you best not treat, pardon the interruption, with the same level of freaking disrespect like you have done. Get this, the show is ending in the middle of the NBA playoffs. We are a couple of weeks away from NFL training camps. Yes, the dog days of summer would have brought it down, but at least ESPN should have had the courtesy to let it run all the way to January 1st. Let it at least have one more anniversary, but no, its fate is sealed. And quite frankly, I'm sad. The last week of shows have had every panelist have their own individual FaceTimes at the end of each of these last shows. No eliminations like the standard, no winner. It's like watching a funeral. A funeral for a show I never thought I'd see the funeral for, especially at my age. I thought this show was going to outlive me, but it turns out it's not to be. So, the last true connection to my sports life is now gone. The first, Jim Rome, is still doing his thing at 60 years old, but now it makes me wonder, how long am I going to be able to do that? How long am I going to be able to celebrate smack offs and be in the jungle and have lunch with a Wookiee? Trust me, if you're a clone, you understand what I'm talking about. How long will I have left before it's gone too? My last connection to sports. I don't watch PTI. I may listen to Colin Cowherd, but I do it through YouTube videos. I don't watch NFL Live. I don't watch Sports Center. That was my brother's thing. I don't watch NFL football games or baseball. I don't lament the loss of baseball tonight. I don't lament the loss of SportsCenter from Los Angeles. And the quicker that first take can die, so I don't have to hear Stephen A. Smith talk again, I will throw a party with champagne. But to lose Around the Horn, to lose one of my favorite shows ever, largely before its time, to lose the sound of a loud blaring horn at 3 o'clock, to lose the mute button, to lose Tony Reali's paper toss as he tells us specifically that we are on a 23.5 hour break, or a 72.5 hour break if it was a Friday, to lose the ability to always say the horn after every time you would end the sentence with a round. To lose that, to lose the community that it's gained, to lose the connection to the sports writers, to the actual idea of a sports writer. It's truly a sad day. I feel like today I'm closing the final chapter of my young college life. The young 20-year-old that had a dream of a sports show. And I'm closing the book on that. No more sports. No more talking about football unless it's Madden. No longer talking about the glories of the Stanley Cup. No longer chewing it up with my friend Tony Desiri and Pappy Sorellis. No more connections to those days. No more connections to the family. No more connections to sports. My last connection to sports on its own is now gone. And by the time you see this video, Around the Horn will be gone too. I never thought I would have to say both hello to an old idea and goodbye to a very old one. I would have never thought in the same year that I was sitting here celebrating Kolioko's 20th as the thought of revival danced in their heads, that I would be celebrating the 20th and final year of my once favorite and always favorite sports show. Sure, I don't have any papers to toss, but I do have thank yous. Thank you, Around the Horn. And thank you, Tony Reale, even though I hated you when you first took over Max's seat. You earned that seat. You earned that leather jacket you wear. You earned the 20 years that you got. You earned my respect. And to every panelist, whether I loved or hated you, thank you for spending 30 minutes of your time trying to yell at me at how much you were right. It was a fun time. It's a fun little show. And I hope ESPN one day has to be forced, just like everything, to regret its decision. Because it would be funny if in a few years we go back around 2.0. Not because it needs it, but because the sports world needs it, and ESPN ends up a dang fool. So, please, share with me, fellow horn watchers, what are your memories? Do you feel bittersweet? Because I sure do. Now, I don't know what the next video will be, but I just know I had to make this one. Perhaps I'll get back to my thing. Maybe in 23.5 hours. Until then, find peace in your own nirvana, and Godspeed to everyone around the horn.